Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Continuing content on Hisuian forms and how well they might perform in VGC Gen 9 since Hisuian forms are confirmed. And as always, this is speculation. We don't really know exactly what these are going to be like in Gen 9, what new moves they might get access to, so on and so forth. Today I want to talk about Hisuian Qwilfish. Let's take a look at this typing. So we have Dark Poison, which is a fantastic defensive typing. It is only super affected by ground and has an immunity and 4 resist. That is just fantastic, and you don't get much better than this when it comes to a defensive typing. And offensively, it's not too bad. You do have 4 super effectives, so you do have a little bit of offense with this typing, but obviously not great compared to a more offensive. But this defensive typing is going to synergize really well with one of the abilities, which it gets the same abilities as the normal Qwilfish, which is Poison Point, Swift Swim, but Intimidate is also still available, and that is probably going to be the ability you want to use, because Intimidate with this kind of bulky typing is just incredible synergy. This will make for a very competitive Intimidate switch in. That alone is enough to make this viable in VGC, because bulky Intimidate switch-ins are always common, and you see them in just about every VGC format, which obviously Overquill is also going to benefit from this. But the reason I'm talking about Qwilfish specifically is because this will now have access to Eviolite, since it has an evolved form now. And what that means is the 85 defense and 55 special defense, which is not super great, now it becomes 50% higher if you add Eviolite. So this thing actually has decent bulk because of that, while still having a fair amount of speed and a decent attack stat. Similar to like Arcanine, though I think it'll have higher defense and special defense with Eviolite, while also having a similar speed stat and a much bulkier typing. Now, going on to the signature move, this does get Barb Barrage, which Overquill does too. It is a 60 power move, physical poison, doubles damage if the target has a status condition, 30% chance of poison. It's a fine move. It's not super good for Qwilfish specifically. I think it'd be more suited on Overquill with its higher attack stat. But since this thing will be primarily used defensively, I don't actually think you would run Barb Barrage on this. You'd much rather run more consistent moves that do not require being set up to have high damage output. Or you might just be running a whole bunch of supportive moves. Which, getting onto the moves that Hisuian Qwilfish does have access to, you do see Icy Wind. That could be very useful to have, so that your Intimidate user can also lower speed. And of course, to cover ground, you do have Ice Beam, so it can cover its weakness if absolutely necessary. One problem I'm seeing here with its moveset, however, is it only has access to one dark move, and that is Dark Pulse, which I know PLA does not have a lot of moves in it, but this not getting Snarl could be the difference between it being used a lot and it not being used at all, because Arcanine has access to Snarl, and Incineroar also has access to Snarl. So this not having that option is kind of a letdown. But interestingly, it does have access to Spikes, which is an arena trap, which might synergize really well with Intimidate if someone wants to switch out that Mon that was intimidated to get their full power back. You can put down Spikes to force your opponent to not really want to switch out. So I think that also could synergize with Intimidate. It is possible this will introduce a new type of Intimidate switch-in that has a little bit of different options, and depending on how this format ends up, that could be very useful. If we look at the original Qwilfish, it does have access to some interesting moves, such as Minimize, and Destiny Bond, Acupressure, Thunder Wave. Some really interesting moves, Acid Spray. Now, there's a good chance that the Hisuian form will get Acid Spray, which that would be an amazing move to have. It also could still have access to Steel Roller to get rid of terrain. So from what I'm seeing, this can be a really interesting Intimidate Mon that completely changes the way that we're used to seeing these kind of things play. Because if you have an Intimidate switch in, if you bring this thing out it has moves that can set up that other Intimidate users do not have access to, like Acupressure and Minimize. Things that you want to get rid of it very quickly instead of just switch out a Mon passively to try and get your offense back in a favorable position. This thing can punish that really hard. And even if you do want to just attack it and take it out very quickly, it does have access to Destiny Bond. So it could just end up trading with your strong offense like your Excadrill or something. So obviously the item you want to have on this is Eviolite. If you are not running Eviolite, you will be better off using Overqwil. But the moves I would probably run on this is Icy Wind for some speed control and probably some kind of attack like Poison Jab, just so you can have some form of offense. And then the other moves would just be some kind of shenanigans like Acupressure or Minimize. Just something to make this incredibly annoying to deal with and require the opponent to focus it down. I also think Taunt would be a great option to run on this thing. That is assuming it gets a lot of these moves that the original has, because its moveset's really not great in PLA. And I don't know if in Gen 9 they want to keep it that way or not. The viability of this is really going to depend on the moves it gets from Gen 9. Currently, with the moves that we know it has, it's not great. And you're probably better off with like Arcanine or something. But if it gets access to Minimize, Destiny Bond, Toxic Spikes, Venom Drench, then it has a lot of flexibility, and I think it synergizes really well with its bulk and with its Intimidate. And while I don't expect this to be particularly popular, set up correctly, I do think it would be very difficult to deal with if your opponent is not actually ready for that kind of Intimidate user. So overall, it's not the best Intimidate user, but I think it has potential to be very good if they give it the right move, because you have a very bulky typing, you have access to Eviolite, and it does have a way of lowering stats in the form of Icy Wind. But since this is a dark type, it could get Parting Shot, which would definitely make it very usable in the format. So we will have to wait and see just what this thing gets access to before we have a decent understanding of how good this is going to perform. But I would not be surprised if this thing is popular in VGC, this and Overqwil. But that's going to be it for this video. If you want to see a specific Hisuian form talked about, let me know in the comments. Also, if you like the video, please give it a like. And maybe consider subscribing if you are enjoying this content. And I will see you guys next time.